and Sophie Marjanac. Andrew Sims is the co-director of the New Weather Institute, coordinator of the Rapid Transition Alliance, and co-author of the original Green New Deal. His books include The New Economics, Ecological Debt, and Cancel the Apocalypse. And I think we will just pass to the speakers, and I'll introduce you one by one. So, Andrew, over to you to open things up.
Right, so I shall see if the magic of screen sharing works. Test tech. And we are going for that one. So good morning, everybody. I don't think I've ever been in so many people's front rooms on a Saturday morning before. This is quite a nice new experience. It feels very anti-lockdown. Very nice to see everyone. Thank you for joining us. So my name's Andrew, and I run a small think tank called the New Weather Institute. And this campaign, Badvertising, is a joint initiative of the New Weather Institute and Possible. It grew out of a project we are also running called the Rapid Transition Alliance, of which Possible is also a member. And that is set up basically to address the problem that the climate is changing faster than we are, and to pose the question, how do we speed up? And in looking at, it's also open for membership if you're a member of an organization and would like to join and share experiences of how to speed and scale answers to the climate emergency. And one of the big areas which we identified that it was simply not getting enough attention, the overlooked sector, if you like, was the way in which advertising fuels the overconsumption, which drives the climate emergency. So we got together, we raised some money, and we've launched Badvertising to stop adverts fueling the climate emergency. Now, what precedents are there for an intervention on something like this? Well, there's something which is very close to home, something very familiar, which, if I can work out how to advance my slides with the right button. There we go, there's number 2. This might be something that you might find shocking, but also rather familiar. It used to be the case that we had doctors advertising us to smoke because it was meant to be good for us, and in the context of small children, thinking that they're going to grow to be 100 years old, but obviously not if they take this doctor's advice. Now, we understood the error of the ways that promoting cigarette smoking and cigarettes and tobacco brought with it a huge public health crisis, a huge burden on the public purse, and a human tragedy at large scale. And it was fought tooth and nail, but over years we moved to a situation in which the advertising of smoking is now severely constrained. And so then we posed the question, why isn't it the case that if you can put checks and balances on the controls of the promotion of products which cause a public health crisis and pass a large burden onto the public sphere, should we not address the same issue about advertising which promotes high carbon lifestyles, high carbon products, and things which are driving the climate emergency? So we looked around and we kind of just realized, once you start looking, you see the way in which not just cars generally, but some of the most highly polluting cars and vehicles are promoted in a fairly blanket fashion. Open your Sunday papers, look at billboards, turn on the TV, and we're also struck by the, shall we say, the kind of the corporate irony bypass of some of the advertising that goes on. So in this Land Rover, with no irony whatsoever, you're seeing a car whose emissions are about 3 times the EU recommended average, ploughing through a flooded road. Also boasting about the fact that it is washable at 50 degrees C, which might be an average temperature in some parts of the world we're driving to with climate change. There's one from just last week, actually, which was in the Guardian magazine. Don't think outside the box. Think like there is no box. Perhaps the real message is think like there is no climate or no planet to worry about, because there's a car also with emissions around about 3 times the EU recommended average. So they're everywhere. They're all around us. We wanted to do something about them. Part of the reason, it's part of the stats, and the reason that we focused in on SUVs is because they're one of the most egregious examples of high carbon living, and coupled with the fact that in a moment that we're living through right now, when space in the urban context Last year in the UK, 150,000 cars were sold that are too big to fit standard parking spaces. Also, it's been part of a trend. Just 10 years ago, about 1 in 10 new cars were SUVs. Today, it's about 4 in 10, and that's an average which works around the world as well. The top 10 highest polluting vehicles by sales in the UK are all SUVs. And extraordinarily, I mean, it's quite hard to get your head around that rising sales of SUVs are the second biggest cause of increasing CO2 emissions globally. So we have a big issue, and all the signs are that things are still moving in the wrong direction. This is a car set to be launched next year by Cadillac. It has emissions even larger than the Range Rovers that you just looked at. And there's a little tweet you can see down here on the screen, which was done by a journalist who was sent to cover the launch of this vehicle. And he took his little son along, and you can see that there are other issues relating to, apart from emissions, about the danger that they propose on public streets. So without any change, the industry has chosen, the vehicle industry has chosen actively to market and push vehicles which not only take up more space, not only are more dangerous for other road users, but whose emissions are off the scale. So there is an issue which we are now addressing with the campaign. These are some of the resources that we've been producing to look into it. One, looking at what were the lessons to be learnt from the campaign to bring an end to the advertising of tobacco and cigarettes. Another, looking at the way in which SUVs have been marketed into their position of dominance on our streets. These are all available on badverts.org, our website. It's not just us, of course, there's other people who are on the case. This rather interesting creative approach to reinterpret the kind of messages that we're getting from advertisers. You may see more of these popping up and down the country by concerned citizens. We take no legal responsibility for them, but we applaud our concerned citizens' conscientious acts in all cases. And what are we doing? What are we asking people to do? Well, one is, right now in the UK, we have a petition that we are hoping to get across 10,000 signatures. So if you haven't already signed this, please do. It's directly accessible through the badverts.org website. We really want to hit that 10,000 figure so that we can kind of take it to the next level. So please share, as well as signing yourself, please share it with others. It sums up the case. There's a kind of a short version of the summary, and that's easily found on the website. What else are we doing? We are not obviously just looking at SUVs. The campaign is about high carbon advertising more broadly and other sectors where our lifestyles and consumption patterns have a big impact. Here's an advert that one or two of you might have seen. It was resurrected recently in the context of disinvestment campaigns targeted at fossil fuel companies. This is an advert from Humble from a few decades ago, where even though, you know, climate science kind of understood what was going on, you saw extraordinary claims like this, but you can also see the way in which the industry has an issue with how it communicates. Shell obviously has more than once been taken up in front of the Advertising Standards Authority for making false green claims about how it operates. BP, and a big oil company, famously tried to relaunch itself as Beyond Petroleum back in the year 2000, and promptly went and got ever deeper into petroleum than it ever had been. More recently, there are some questionable claims being made by all the big oil companies about their attempts to go green. But if you just look at the way that they advertise themselves, you might get the false impression that they are, by a majority sense, renewable energy companies rather than the oil companies that they really are. So these are other areas we're going to be looking at. And I think we have one more further down. We have our action, of course. Now, 90% of people in the UK now live in areas which are have declared a climate emergency. That means there's a kind of an overall democratic mandate for action. We think that it's going to be extremely hard for local authorities, or in fact municipalities, government at any level, to deliver on claims of a climate emergency without having policies which commit to a sort of a low carbon strategy in the kind of messaging, advertising messaging, which is seen in the public domain. So we are inviting people to write to the local councillor and suggest that they experiment with a model resolution for the introduction of a low carbon advertising policy. That also you can find straight through from our website. And finally, I just came across this. It's on the side of a van on my high street. And I thought, oh, they got there first, but we could have called ourselves something like that, ads removal. So this is what we're about. That, ladies and gentlemen, was your whirlwind tour and introduction to Badvertising. Everything that I've shown you, you can find on badverts.org. The two big actions that we're asking for is please sign the petition, share the petition. Please look at asking your local councillors to introduce a motion to have a low carbon advertising policy, which will be in line with the climate emergency declaration that they've almost certainly already supported and passed at the local level. And with that, I'll wrap up. Thanks, Robbie.